approaches towards trying to deal with that particular problem. We talked about the 405. I just will mention one other local issue, again, that I started many years ago with Sherman Oaks Homeowners Association, as well as the Studio City Residents Association and some of the organizations in the Valley, and that is the issue of the airports. Working with Adam Schiff and Brad Sherman, we are trying to put into the federal aviation legislation a curfew on both Burbank and Van Nuys airports. We believe if we just work on Burbank, that'll just shift a lot of those flights to Van Nuys. So we're taking it in a regional approach, and we're working hard to try and make that happen. Look, there's so many issues we get into: education and education reform, what the administration and a really exceptional Secretary of Education is trying to do. The immigration issue is always a hot and controversial and important one. The future of the American economy. I think I'm going to stop here. Thank you all very much for coming tonight. And just end with one thought, and that is, I've made bad votes, and in retrospect, I didn't know they were bad when I was making them. And I made good votes. I've had days when different things I was trying to do didn't get accomplished. But for us, for my wife and I, this has been, this whole years in public office and being able to try and work on behalf of my constituents and the country is been a tremendous honor, and I thank you all, or at least enough of you supported me to let me have this honor.
All right. Thank you. It's amazing too. He only got through like 2 of his 20 pages of stuff. He's doing a few things, I think. A couple things, just so you folks know, I'm not going to ask all the questions tonight for a couple reasons. A couple of the questions I couldn't read. Is there feedback on this? I couldn't read. I just couldn't read your writing. A couple of questions had to do with. I'm going to talk like this. A couple of questions had to do with. All right. It's just there's terrible feedback on my side. That's okay. A couple of questions had to do with issues that did not have to do with the congressman, but had to do with more local issues. So we will, most of you put your names on this, and the local issue items, we will forward those on to the council member, and we'll hopefully get your questions answered that way. We also have Jonathan here, who's going to ask a couple questions that you folks had asked. Jonathan is a regular columnist for the Studio City Sherman Oaks News. The Kids Corner. It used to be the Kids Corner, now it's the Teens Corner. So he's going to ask a couple questions. And this is his first time, so don't make him too nervous, okay?
I'm worried about
it. All right. The first kind of softball question, and I'm going to get into some of the meat and potatoes. There's 3 folks that are just asking. These are the first set of questions. It has to do with politics as far as upcoming election. And then I'm going to go into actually issues. So Richard, I can't read your last name, Judy Durning and Susan Kennedy, they all basically asked you, will you be debating your Republican opponent? And if yes, when? And if not, why?
The answer is, I'm quite open to doing that. My guess is the best time would be in October, frankly, so we can get enough time. Someone needs to invite us. I think some organization should make the invitation, and absolutely. I mean, I'm not committing to debate every night for 20 straight nights, but let's try one and see how it goes.
Okay, terrific. So you would be okay with the Sherman Oaks and Studio City Resident Association sponsored debate?
Absolutely.
Terrific. Richard?
Consider it done.
All right, great. Thank you. All right. The first question, actually, I'm going to ask, because and I rarely do this, but it's something that I have very close connections with, and that's the failure of the banks in our society. And I am a real estate agent in this area, and have been for many, many years. What's happened in the lending industry should be considered a crime. We gave them, the taxpayers gave them billions of dollars, which everybody knows. The folks that have gotten the absolute screw as far as not being able to keep their businesses open and not being able to go out and buy or refinance their homes is the middle class. The folks that can't afford homes can get FHA financing with only 3.5% down. The federal government's doing a bailout to help the banks unload their foreclosure properties. The very, very wealthy people that have $10 million deposited in banks have access to their TARP money. Some of these folks that I see are getting 100% financing at 3.5% interest on $1 million, $1.5 million, $2 million loans. And these are TARP. This is supposedly TARP money. The banks are saying, "Oh, we're lending out the money." The reality is that, and I know many businessmen that are out of business. Where my uncle had a very successful import business for 30 years up in Oxnard. He employed 260 people. He had a credit line with Bank of America, year in, year out, for over $60 million. 2 years ago, they said, "We're not renewing your credit line of $60 million. You're down to $1 million." He went from 280 employees, 260, 280 employees. He's down to 20 right now, and he'll probably be out of business by the end of this year. The federal government needs to enact, instruct, lead the banks back to lending. Lending is the secret to our recovery. It's the secret to the jobs. And we need to not put, just sugarcoat this deal. The reality is that when the jobs keep going away, and the lending is not happening. It's not happening in the private sector. It's not happening with homes. It's not happening with businesses, and it has to be fixed.
Number one, with your last point, I absolutely agree. I even mentioned in my opening comments, it is a risk-averse lending institution is a significant part of why this recovery is stuttering right now. As well as, the irony is, 15 years ago we used to rail if the American consumer wasn't saving. The savings were 0%, 1%, sometimes minus 1%. Now all of a sudden, because of the nature of the economy, the consumers are saving more than they've saved in 40 and 50 years. Because they're scared of what's going to happen. But what stunts me about what you said, and which I really would like to get information on, follow up on, and I mean quickly, is the notion that there's lending going out of the size you talked about with nothing down. This sounds like going back to the old days, and I'm stunned by it. I know about the problems of getting the lending to the small businessmen and the refinancing for middle-income homeowners and prices that are around, the median of this area. How difficult that is. I'm totally unaware that anything about what FHA is doing is allowing those size loans to go out with nothing down at 3.5% interest.
No, those aren't the jumbo loans. The FHA is 3.5%, which anybody...
But not nothing down.
3.5% down.
Oh, I thought 3.5% interest rate.
No, 3.5%.
Well, that's the kind of down payment that got us in before.
That's what the federal government's doing. They sponsor the...
When I talked about the mistakes, and here's where I blame this part of it. I got a lot to blame on the other guys too. But for those of us, both parties, we became enamored with the notion of home ownership to the degree that we allowed, I think, pretty scuzzy practices to go on in the name of encouraging home ownership. Income statements never verified. Everybody assuming that the security of the house would cover the loan, that somehow, even though in California we have, both in the early 80s and in the early 90s, faced these real estate slumps. We've seen it before. What was going on in the mid part of this past decade, with the stunning increase in property values, how anyone could have thought that one in. How anyone could grant loans based on those values without verifying income, without requiring significant down payments. There were some people who were getting homes who just could not afford to live in those homes. And in effect, there were certain aspects of federal policy and many aspects of the bank's desire to loan and then sell off the loans and churn that fed all of this. So I would like to look into this.
Okay, well, I'd be happy to sit with your office and go over some other stuff, but I know we have a lot of other great questions, so